Welcome back to the Live Alive podcast. 10 years ago, Orlando was on the verge of a Christian revival.
Now, it seems more like a Christian ghost town. You're listening to Season 2, Lost Magic.
Welcome to Fantasyland.
On August 21st, 2003, I left home, armed with a few duffel bags, my first ever laptop, a few $100s in cash, with no vehicle, no companions, and no idea of what to expect as I headed south to explore the newest uncharted territory of my life, the University of Central Florida. I was 18 and headed towards the college frontier. In the vast oasis of our cultural phenomena called freshman year, I ended up finding my way crashing headlong into the way of Jesus. That interruption changed the trajectory of my life in more ways than I can explain, or even conceive, honestly. As my old lifestyle began to slowly splinter off, I found myself in a position that I would have never imagined in high school. I was becoming a Christian.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
Really, dude?
Super really. And I wasn't alone. You have to understand, in the mid-2000s, there was a revolution happening in Orlando. Some might even call it a revival. Oh yeah. There was a palpable sense of God moving in the younger people of this city. It was truly a magical time to be young, Christian, and fully alive. Across the city, from the college campus to downtown, millennial Christians were pushing closer and closer to the brink of a gargantuan cultural tipping point. The frontier life of college ended for me with the gold rush of 2008. While the housing market was in free fall and baby boomers were losing their mind right alongside their decades of stored up wealth, we were exiting college, applying for our first jobs, deferring college loans, and renting, and somewhat oblivious to the outside world. I knew so many people sprinting towards the gold mine of possibilities within Christianity. Looking back, I should have seen the cracks, but when I left Orlando in 2008 to begin my own vagabond adventures, I naively believed that Orlando would be a bedrock destination of Christianity for decades to come. I mean, we had the fastest growing churches, the most culturally influential people. The light of the gospel was illuminating the city and drawing everyone towards it and each other. Yet, when I returned last year, a decade later, the millennial Christians did have a gargantuan cultural tipping point. Just not the one I expected.
I hope you enjoy the show, and incidentally, have a handkerchief handy.
Thank you.
The culture had tipped towards religious relativism, Christian hesitancy, and evangelical abhorrence. I found Christian friends who had exiled themselves in their own homes. I discovered friends in the process of deconstructing everything they once believed. I kept running into person after person that hadn't even talked about what they might believe in years. Some were post-church and others post-faith and even others anti-faith. The obvious question here is far easier to state than the corresponding answer. What happened? Coming back to town 10 years later has provided me a unique vantage point. When you get stuck in the day-to-day trenches of life, it's so difficult to pull back and see the big picture. How did Orlando become a city of lost magic? Over the next few episodes, we will explore how the wild frontier of a youthful, energetic, idealistic optimism to change the freaking world had transformed into a Fantasyland of supposed prosperity, rife with apathy, withdrawal, and most of all, disenchantment. Today, we start with the call. The first time I went to Summit Church was in the spring of 2005. I was a sophomore at UCF, and Summit actually represented the latest physical destination of my calculated wild goose chase to track down this girl I was crushing on. Hard. I had never met her, nor technically seen her, but I was obsessed with showing my friends her profile on this new website called The Facebook. At the time, Summit Church was meeting in a cafeteria at a local high school and was about 2.5 years old. Here are some of the founders of Summit talking about their humble beginnings.
September 8th, 2002. We just decided that that would be our launch day, and we prayed and we did everything we knew how to do to get ready, but ultimately we recognized that was a God thing, and it was up to him. That being said, September 7th, 2002, I was very nervous, but it was a great first Sunday. We had about 300 well-wishers, and it was really neat to watch people at that stage of the game because we needed all hands on deck. I mean, everybody played a part. That was a really, really fun season. But we soon went to 2 services at the Aloma Cinema Grill, and then we couldn't house any more people there, so we had to look for a new location.
So one of the first things that I did when I came on staff with Summit was to help with the transition to Winter Park High School. So we had a wonderful auditorium there. We moved over and we had about 3 months in the auditorium. It was really, looking back, a great time because we continued to grow even when it seemed impossible that we should. And the volunteers who helped make church happen every week, I just feel like that was a time where an important part of the ethos of Summit was formed.
Eventually, the situation at Winter Park High School became such that it was bad for us to be in there every Sunday, especially for the children who were at that time in the lobby, and it was parents would just kind of drop their kid over a plastic wall, and we wanted to move on to the thing that God had next for us. And so Isaac called together a group of folks at Summit who were in real estate and business and just said, here's the deal, we have no money, and we don't really even have the credibility to get a church credit card, but we need a building. And within a week, I think, we found this place. They were just vacating. We caught the owners right in time to be able to negotiate with them for a price that ended up just being still really high for us, but God brought it together in the end, and people gave like you wouldn't believe. And we moved in here the Sunday we purchased it and started doing church. And we met in one of the theaters. The kids were in the lobby here, and we began renovations on the children's space. Once we got them in a good situation, then we began to work on what would be the sanctuary in the lobby, and we've been here. It's been a wonderful thing.
I never got involved with Summit, but then again, I never got involved with any church back then. I was more of a bystander who watched many friends from college attend and commit themselves to Summit as members, leaders, and even staff. I recently spoke to some of them about their initial draw to Summit. Here's my friend Corey's take.
I went to Summit based on a friend's recommendation my first week of being in Orlando. And I just remember loving that things felt very unique there, and that it didn't really fall into what mega churches kind of felt like at that point, and that they had a lot of original music. The preaching was really the teaching from Isaac was a lot more theologically heavy than kind of the church I had grown up in and what I was used to hearing. And it felt like it was a deep and really, really authentic community.
In summary, the arts, the preaching, and the community were unique, and they drew people to Summit. My other friend Kyle told me about his draw to the music.
I had spent some time away from church, and somebody invited me to check it out, and I was playing a bunch of shows locally around town and at bars and stuff, and we get to church service that morning, and the music was great, and I look on stage, and the worship pastor leading the music was also like the same dude I saw play a show with the band the night before and was drinking beer and having a cigarette after the show. And I was like, this is real interesting. Like, kind of dig this. And so that like really piqued my interest. And then Isaac was at the time, if not still, like the best communicator I'd ever heard. It was a very fresh, like, it felt like it was for me, which like every other church I'd ever been to, like, felt like it was trying to like mold me to become something. And this one felt like it was just trying to serve me and who I was and like where I was at.
Our friend Chris expressed a similar attraction towards Summit Church.
I think what drew me to Summit was, the pastor there was one of the biggest things. So Isaac Hunter, I'd never heard a teacher like him. He was the one who made, Christianity make sense for me. The way that he taught, he was funny, he was witty, and they had this saying there. I'm going to mess it up because it's been a while, but it was something like, take as long as you need, but no longer than you have to when kind of making decisions. So when they would talk about what it meant to know Jesus or trying to figure out if Jesus was who he said he was, they presented it in a way where they said, take as long as you need, but no longer than you have to. So there was just this really open, welcome invitation to be wherever you were at.
It seemed like everybody started going to Summit, and all it took was just one service to make it their home. Here's John.
I got invited to go to Summit actually by an atheist who was dating a girl who went there. And I went, and it was artistic. It wasn't like they were saying from the pulpit, we care about the arts. It was just obvious. Everything was cared about. It wasn't, am I allowed to curse on this?
Sure.
It wasn't.
Sorry, correction here on the cutting room floor. I thought we could, but our sponsors apparently take issue with that. So from here on out, with any curse word, I'm just going to add in a synonym so you understand what we're saying.
It wasn't
poo-poo
graphic design or like, I think in a lot of churches, and I'm okay with this, honestly, to a large extent. It's like, because the person's heart is in the right place, well, they can play music, and they don't really necessarily care how talented the person is. Summit had just really good artists, like on the worship band. Obviously, the people who are doing graphic design, and then obviously Isaac. Mm-hmm. He was honest and real. It's very strange. I walked in a little hesitant or whatever, knowing Jesus, and it felt like my home by the end of that hour and a half.
Summit was led by 3 childhood friends. Andy, the artist.
I won't tell you that we're different when you know we are the same. We need Jesus.
John, the executive.
Our job in this is to be as clear in our understanding of what is working, that God's blessing at Summit, and to be realistic about that. We have, all those, 5-year plan, 10-year, like we have all the things that we can do, but at the heart of it, it's Jesus said he'd be about the business of growing his church, and that's his primary, that's primarily his job, not ours. And we're doing this because lost people matter to God.
And Isaac, the communicator.
If we do this right, if everybody's faithful, it's quite possible that this will impact not just thousands of people at Herndon and thousands of people at Waterford, in the plaza, the jail, in North Orlando, but literally tens of thousands of people around Orlando and around the world. It could be really amazing what God does, and it'll trace back to this moment.
One of the main reasons for Summit's explosive growth was its teaching pastor, Isaac. As some of the guys alluded to earlier, there was something just magnetic about him. I love my friend Kyle's description of getting to know Isaac.
Okay, so like Isaac was super normal and very real. His clothes never fit well. Like his pants were always a little too big. His shirt was a little too baggy, and I don't know. He was always kind of a little chubby, like not like fat, but just like not super cool looking dude, and was pretty in a really cool, in a really like relatable way. Was self-deprecating on stage and made fun of himself quite a bit, but then was also just so smart and so well versed in history and in culture and in like theology, and was able to weave all of those things together. Was just a very well read man, like beyond like the Bible and beyond theology. Loved literature in general, and so he was able to string together a lot of different relatable examples, or if you didn't understand one of them, there would be two or three others after the fact that like would that you'd be able to latch onto, and it was really nice. Just kind of like a goofy dude. Kind of felt like he was like image-wise was stuck in like 2001, and it was really kind of fun. It was cool. But nobody cared because he kicked ass at communicating, and you always felt like he really cared about you when you were speaking to him one-on-one, and it was really get a really special gift for sure.
He was just a lovable guy, unaware his dress pants were a little too baggy, slightly pudgy, and just a gifted communicator who could explain the gospel of Jesus and the kingdom of God in ways that made thousands and thousands flock to hear him week in and week out and let their guard down to trust him. Also, he was funny. Not in a pastor kind of way, but in a genuine, self-deprecating sort of way. When I think of Isaac, I tend to imagine a fun, lighthearted, even goofy persona. Like him trying to keep a straight face while acting with a fictional character named Bad James.
Look at this. It's a pretty nice place you have here.
Thanks. We're really grateful for it.
Yeah. Hey, what's the name of your club?
Well, it's not a club. It's a church. It's called Summit.
You sure? Because I saw all these people in line for food and beverages. There were like 4 lines here, and everybody is like, I'll have the grape sub, please. But it was real quiet.
That was for communion.
And I don't know. I already had lunch, so I just got a little piece.
That's the sacrament.
Come now, do what?
What is the best thing a husband can do for his wife?
He can maybe, mow the lawn.
What's the best thing a wife can do for her husband?
Oh, don't go there, Pastor.
Or recording a ridiculous voicemail.
It's recording. You stay that far away, you're fine.
James Raffinade, this is Sean Connery. Is your last name French? I hate the French. I called because I want you to play a younger version of me. I called because I want you to play a younger version of me in my upcoming movie biography. It's titled, Do You Want a Bloody Punch in Your Stupid Mouth? Let me know.
At its best, Summit was an amazing testament to what God can do through his people when we're working together on a common mission. In those days, Summit was experiencing something special, something tangible, even something explosive. I went back to ask the guys this question. What was Summit like when it was firing on all cylinders? Like, what did it actually look like?
Well, it actually looked like people's lives being changed, like on a daily basis. We would hear all these stories of how Summit had essentially saved people, and the energy was amazing. They were like, from just an organization standpoint, they were hiring 20 people a year or whatever. It was just like it was growing so fast, and it felt very, very light and exciting and fun, and everybody was everyone on staff was young and incredibly talented, and it really felt like nothing bad that happens at other churches could happen here. and I remember distinctly thinking that in those times, thinking that like, this is a really, really unique place that has figured out the pitfalls of that other churches so can easily fall into. And it truly did feel pretty bulletproof, I guess.
Yeah.
What it was is like, it's like when you walk into a river, like a deep river, you're just walking into just the sides of it, and you feel the current, like just pushing against your legs. Right. Mm-hmm. So that was Summit for me. Like, you would walk in and like, you could feel the Spirit of God moving. And it wasn't just like moving in the sense of like wind going through a building. And it wasn't a movement of people, let's say like Democrats or Republicans, or even like Invisible Children was like a thing in like the late 2000s of like, we're a movement, we're going to change the world. So it wasn't even like goal-based. It was more like, God is moving all of his people in this place. And it could be different for each one of them what that means. But like, you know, when I feel like when I walk into a river and I feel that current, I just want to jump in. And that's what I did. And that was Summit. Summit for me, when it was firing all cylinders, was it was the current of God. Honestly, I never thought about why it was firing on all cylinders, because it didn't matter to me. I just loved that it was so alive. I mean, alive is such a, I don't know if it's cliche, it's just a stupid word, but it just was what it was. And it didn't ever feel like it would stop. So that's why I never thought about, oh, it's suddenly firing all cylinders. When I came in, it felt like it was already going, and then it was getting bigger and bigger. I'm not saying in terms of people. I'm saying in terms of numbers. I'm saying in terms of God doing amazing stuff. The stories that were happening, people changing.
It was, I mean, dude, like probably 5,000 people a Sunday at just like the main campus. They had like an overflow room. That main room held about 850, and the overflow room held about another 100, and both of those were packed to the seams. There was multiple campuses. There was like a campus right down the road, like really less than 2 miles down the road, that was super full. And then there was campus in Waterford Lakes, near the college near UCF, that was real full and had multiple services. And there was just all these different places that were packed to the brim. Music was crushing. There was so many like musicians that we could get away with having like 4 or 5 different bands at all these different campuses. And it was, I don't know, it was real fun. It was a really fun time for sure. It was NBA players were coming to church, like Orlando Magic players, which was pretty tight. And Dwight Howard got baptized by Isaac, which was crazy. That was a super weird moment.
How did he lift him out of the water?
Oh, I have no idea. It was hilarious. I mean, it was just, he was like, Isaac was just dwarfed next to him. It was so funny. And it kind of felt like a paparazzi shoot. Everybody, including me, had their phones out and taking pictures of them. And so that was super odd. It's strange, but I mean, I don't know. I did it too.
When things are successful and begin to grow rapidly, things change. Like, what do you think happened when thousands repented and believed in Jesus as Messiah? In one day. In Acts 2 and 4. Like, what happened the next day? Or the next month? When churches grow, leaders become less available, Names are forgotten, systems are added, teams form, and the haters start coming out of the woodwork. Our opinions and preferences are minimized for the greater good. Even if it's understood, change is hard.
I would say culturally it happened in 2009, and it was when they wanted to go multi-site. So, Isaac was a very, very talented preacher. I would say, honestly, still the best person I've ever heard. And in 2008, that was great, but then it was growing too big for that building, and they had just built a new sanctuary in 2007, I believe, and it was already getting hard. I think they had just gone up to 4 services. So they thought, hey, we can become a mega church, or we can go multi-site. Mega church, I guess, would be like we either buy a huge building where we can fit like 10,000 people, kind of go the Northland route, or we will start different churches in different areas. So I think it was the first one was out near UCF, and we will have a video screen of Isaac preaching. And that's what they decided to do. And again, like when you have a person who's as talented as Isaac, who's bringing all these people in, you are left with, and you have the context of people going to church because of a pastor, essentially. Then you are stuck with, what do you do with that? Either go ridiculously big or find some other way. So they decided this video screen thing. With that, they decided to make the church much more corporate in the way that they did things internally. Whereas before, maybe a little, again, Summit was a very perfectionistic place, but there was still kind of room for the spirit in a way. Like nothing was like standardized, and you could just kind of do things. As they started going multi-site, they started wanting to corporatize everything, standardize it. So these are our 5 truths that we believe in. Every service will be doing this, this, this. What does a successful Summit service look like? This, this, this. Which totally makes sense in terms of efficiencies, in terms of making sure that the experience of Summit is the same wherever you go. And also that's like the dark side of corporatizing Christianity and church, is you almost take the life out of it.
Growing pains are normal and necessary. Everything is bound to change and evolve at some point, or else it dies. So, how do we endure it? We endure when our relationship with God defines our circumstances. Or, at least we should. The problem is, oftentimes, change in our life reveals our trust in something else besides God. We like to imagine that we're prepared for whatever God is allowing in our lives. But no matter how well prepared we think we are with our correct theologies, our right disciplines, our super close friendships, or even our well thought out personal safeguards, life always finds a way to blindside us. Sometimes it comes in the form of a phone call.
So I was home and I got a phone call, I believe like around lunch or maybe a little bit later than lunch, from my boss at the time. And he told me, he's like, hey, I don't know what's going on. I don't know any of the details. And literally everything I'm telling you is all that I know. But Isaac just suddenly resigned last night. And I have no clue why, but I just thought I would let you know and tell you, and things could start to get really, really crazy and shook up.
Lost Magic is a production of Live Alive and recorded at Central Florida Studios. This episode is written by Jeremy Shirky and produced by David Pizzoli, with contributions from Tatiana Faria and Krista Donna. Special thanks to our interviewees, Kyle Cox, Chris Rendazzo, Corey Quintard, and John Strong. Executive producers are Ed Holtz and Steve Douglas. If you would like to participate with us, you can go to lostmagicstories.com and you can share your story there. Feel free to subscribe and leave a rating for the Live Alive podcast. And as always, thank you for listening.